Okay, we might make a start, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Okay, welcome. So, if you haven't used this platform before, I'll just run through a few housekeeping items. I'm Sharon Fitzgerald from Mintrack, by the way, and I'll be moderating today's session, which just means I make sure everything stays on track, so you won't hear from me again unless there's any technical issues, which hopefully there shouldn't be. If you're experiencing any troubles logging in or out or during the webinar, you've got some technical issues, I've put the Redback support number just on the right of your screen. So give them a call and they'll be quite happy to talk you through any issues that you might be having. Any questions or comments that you have throughout the webinar, you can type in the bottom left-hand corner in that chat function. There's a little icon underneath that chat function which you can use to change your status. So you can put your hand up or change your status to having gone for a coffee or happy, or hopefully not the sleeping icon. So feel free to play around with that. And Emily Walker from MLA and myself will be keeping an eye on the questions coming through, as well as Ian and Long, who will be presenting. Okay, so if you've got any questions about how it runs or anything with the webinar, pop them in the chat box and I'll endeavour to help you if I can. Other than that, I will put up the presentation and hand over to Ian, Jensen and Long Hun from MLA. So just one moment. Okay, Long and Ian, all yours. Okay, can you hear me now? Oh, okay, I can see the slides moving. I'm not hearing you, Long or Ian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ian Jensen speaking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Ian.
Thank you. We've
Great, I'll hand over to you now then.
Yeah, thank you. We've designed this webinar specifically around sheep meat shelf life because we believe that sheep meat shelf life is the area where exporters may be experiencing more problems, and so we want to give that some focus. The seminar today is in 4 parts, and we'll stop after each part for questions. So firstly, just to talk about the basics of shelf life. The dictionary defines shelf life as the length of time for which an item remains usable or fit for consumption or saleable. Or the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is an American dictionary, says the length of time that food may be stored and still good to eat. So these are very simple definitions, and we believe that they are perfectly adequate definitions, because shelf life is about the sensory qualities of meat and is it good to eat. And so you don't need to have sophisticated science to know is product within its shelf life. You just need to have your own sensors. Now, Australian product has a long shelf life, and trials on Australian vacuum packed chilled meat, sheep meat, if you store it minus a ½ degree C, will give a shelf life exceeding 90 days. And some of this work has been published, and we've also produced a book you can see there on the right hand side called Shelf Life of Australian Meat. And if you'd like to have a copy of that or a PDF, please let us know. We'll give you the email address at the end of the webinar. And even though we know that product can have a really long shelf life, product in supply chains may fail to live up to that expectation for various reasons. And today we want to talk about some of those reasons and what you can do about it. So shelf life can be predicted and managed. Essentially, you need to know about the temperature history of the product, and if you have that, you can put it into a spreadsheet that MLA has developed with the University of Tasmania that will give you a prediction of shelf life based on the sensory qualities. And you can see up there in the right-hand side some of the sensory work that was done in developing and validating the model. So when we come to talk about sheep meat shelf life, then our product does have a long shelf life, 90 days, but we know that the cold chain has to be managed well to ensure a good shelf life. So that's the simple part, the section 1 of our presentation. I can't see any questions, and I don't see any hands being raised. So we'll just take a quick moment. If somebody has a quick question, we need to hear it now. Otherwise, we'll keep moving to the other sections. Type faster, Dave. So I'll hand over. So David Hopkins has asked about sensory determined using MSA, so Meat Standards Australia. No, it wasn't. Sensory characteristics. The model predicts when you will get a strong odour when the pack is opened. And industry opinion that I've heard is that if you get to that point, then you are getting close to the end of shelf life and product acceptability in every way. So the model is about vacuum packed. It's about the odour when that pack is opened. I'll hand over to Long now.
Okay, thanks, Ian. So my name is Long, and I work closely with Ian in regards to the shelf life area, and we'll be taking you through some of the cold chain analysis I've done. There are various methods of collecting information on your cold chain. So as technology evolves and becomes cheaper, next to the internet, we predict that there will be a shift from single-use USB dialoggers, is from the bottom left here, and more towards the Bluetooth here, which requires infrastructure or network upgrades, and ultimately to the cloud, which is more of a set and forget type of logger. So, which also can provide you real-time data uploads and additional functions such as location tracking and also off-site storage of that data. But at the end of the day, different loggers are used for different purposes. and there is no one size fits all. So, as mentioned earlier, you mostly likely have USB stored with every shipment you send, and it will track your cold chain from loading, transport, and shipment, but limited to the point it's retrieved and downloaded, which is usually at the port of importing country. So you won't really know what's happening to your product after that. Regardless, you still have lots of data up to the point of unloading at your disposal and can provide you really good insight on the current cold chain performance if you have the tool to interpret the data. So the logger provides you with great temperature data, and traditionally we store it away for a rainy day. However, using the shelf life predictive tool, we can interpret the temperature data into shelf life information. More importantly, how did the temperature fluctuation impact on your product? So the graph here is what the shelf life model produces after you've entered the data. The gray line shows growth of micro in your vacuum product. But we suggest you do not worry about it too much, as we observe time and time again, when the bugs reach maximum, there is still a lot of time left before end of shelf life is observed. The blue line here is the temperature entered by the data logger. The tool also allows you to enter specific date and time events in the cold chain, further allowing you to segment which part of the cold chain it is at. And finally, you have the green the green line, which shows remaining shelf life. And in this graph, it shows there is 60 days remaining if you continue to store the product at minus half. So the model interprets data into days of shelf life remaining at different temperatures. So the following examples of cold chain I'm presenting are based on real data into the Middle East. However, it may not represent your individual cold chain. So the cold chain here shown is a typical goods shipment. It was held below -1 majority of the shipment, and even during transshipment, it is held below -0.5. So if we look at the green bar, the product reaches the customer at 39 days and still has 60 days remaining. So the good temperature control allows ample time to sell your product. And here's another example. The temperature has been around -0.5, which is a good temperature and not that much warmer than, the temperature was 0.5, which is not that much warmer than -0.5. However, when you enter the data into the model, it's showing you there is only 40 days left of shelf life when the customer receives the product. The impact of storing 1 degree warmer than the previous example has reduced the shelf life by 3 weeks. This also brings to another important point that small increases in temperature over long periods of time has a significant impact on the product shelf life, leading to less time to sell products. So the example here using the model and calculates what happens to your product after your customer receives the product and stores it via their cold chain. As you can see, the customer receives the product at 39 days with 60 days shelf life remaining if stored at -0.5. However, what happens if your customer has poor cold chain control? For example, less than 4 degrees Celsius is the temperature used worldwide to store products, but that would mean the product will only last 17 days to end of shelf life. At 0 degrees Celsius, the customer will have 50 days to use the product, and this would also match your use by date on the carton label of 90 days. Here is an example of an air freight export. Although we always thought that quick turnaround time to arrive into market gives us the advantage of better shelf life, but the data tells us a very different story. It's really not that much better. You can see when the dry ice was placed into the air cargo, when the temperature started to drop. However, because of the lack of active cooling in the cargo, it doesn't respond to the temperature externally. So allowing the temperature to creep slowly up to 4.5 degrees. And only when the cargo was loaded into the plane and taken off, the temperature start going down again. Although it only took 2 days to get to the customer, if the customer stores at 4 degrees Celsius, they'll only have 20 days to use the product. Even if the customer stores at 0 degrees Celsius, they only have 73 days to use the product, which does not match what is actually on the labeled shelf life of 90 days. Another method of analyzing the logger data is to get an average performance of your cold chain. So this graph here uses 25 sea freight loggers. The solid blue line here is the remaining shelf life label the product when it lands. So the labeled shelf life is what is put on your carton, which is usually about 90 days, but it takes anywhere between 30 to 40 days for it to reach a customer. So when the customer gets the carton, they would read it as there is 55 days left on the product. The grey line here shows that shelf life remaining if customer stores it at -1.5. It shows most products have more than the label shelf life, so that's good. The green line, this one, is the remaining shelf life if product was held at -0.5. As you can see, this is intersecting the label shelf life. This is an important point. The green shows 1/3 of the product will have shelf life greater than what is on the carton label. So it's safe to say that the product will last 90 days on the label. The black shows you are getting it just right. The red shows that you are cutting it thin and running the risk of product may have expired before it reaches what the carton says. And the dotted lines are the predicted shelf life remaining at holding temperatures greater than 0 degrees. So it was 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. And because it's on the left side of the label shelf life, it's reaching the end of shelf life way before what's written. Use the same type of analysis using 25 air freight loggers. The story here is pretty much the same as storing the product as -1.5. You will get lots of shelf life and it would be beyond the carton label. However, storing the product at -0.5 means only 30% of the product has a chance to match the carton label, whereas the rest may potentially not reach it. So to summarize, the current cold chain practices may provide insufficient shelf life for sheep meat to market. This is the end of part 2. So if anyone has any questions, I'll pause for a bit.
David asked about how the odor threshold relates to TVC. The answer is not very well. You can get to the maximum TVC for days and many days before the odor is noticeable. And really this is the reason why vacuum packing is such a successful packaging method, because the kinds of bacteria that grow in the product, lactic acid bacteria, don't cause spoilage the way aerobic organisms do. And so this is why we're emphasising here, and we always emphasise in markets, that it's the organoleptic properties, the odour particularly of the product, that determines its fitness for consumption, not the micro count.
So I think John Ryan is also.
Yeah, I think that this is a problem, John. In theory, you're correct. I've never heard of anybody having a problem with it. Maybe you have. We are. It's one of the reasons we put out this research to demonstrate very clearly that there are significant advantages in storing the product at below zero and at temperatures where the product is not frozen. Meat doesn't freeze until around -2.5. So most trade in meat internationally is below zero. I believe New Zealand lamb routinely gets shipped at -1.5.
Okay, thanks everyone. So I see that all the questions we have. So if you have any more questions, we'll hold it to a bit later. So I'll continue to part 2 of impact of cold chain in country. So we recently trialed a new type of logger which is connected to the internet and can be accessed remotely. Surprisingly, it's not that much more expensive than the current USB loggers. The trial followed the current practice of logger placement into carton, but this time without the data logger stickers plastered all over the cartons. The trial was successful, tracking and collecting data beyond the port and through to customer storage. So these loggers also record additional information such as GPS, light, shock, and relative humidity, which may be useful for some people. So here's one example of a shipment we tracked. The total transport time from plant to port was, including transshipment, was 31 days. The container had very good temperature between -1 to 0 degrees during transport, but the temperature between the front, which is the blue, and the back of the container is 1 degree's difference, meaning there is up to a 1 week difference in shelf life if the product was held at 1 degree Celsius after port arrival. The shelf life remaining when arriving at port is between 52 to 60 days, depending on where the carton was held, what temperature. We can see customer cold chain conditions usually between 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. We did see an exception of one cold chain, which gave it 7 degrees, but that was exception. For the 4 loggers in this example, each one experienced a different condition once it arrived at port. For instance, the blue one, it got turned off, most likely manually by the customer once it arrived and they took it out. One carton had a logger removed at day 8. One customer held product at roughly 4 degrees Celsius, which gives it only 20 days shelf life. However, it appeared to be used at 18 days, which is okay, before expiry date. And the final logger was still in storage. However, because it's kept at 1 degrees, it had 43 days shelf life remaining. So it is still within this before its end of shelf life. So this example here shows that within one container, the product will experience different temperatures, time, and require you to respond to individual fields. Here's another method of analyzing data we call segment analysis, which breaks down loss of shelf life based on segments within the cold chain. The graph shows rate of loss, meaning the days, every day the product is stored at minus a half, it will lose 1 day. If it's warmer, the rate will be faster, colder will be slower. When we calculate the rate of loss for individual segments, it allows us to focus and target potential segments of the cold chain. From abattoir to port, we can see some of the shipments are experiencing close to 1.5 times the rate of loss. During shipment, the rate of loss is very good, which most of it is less than 1. At the customer end, there are some significant losses, reaching nearly twice as fast, with one example being 5 times faster. So this is only 7 examples of the cold chain. The rate of loss is different in different parts of the supply chain. So just summarize, tracking cold chain through to customer allows you to identify problems. So this is the end of segment 3. I'll take any questions. I don't think we have any questions. I'll pass it back on to Ian.
Okay, back to me. So I'm not going to give you any new information. I'm going to sort of rehash what Long has talked about and really say, how do we use this information to manage our cold chains? So we believe the first thing that we need to do with our cold chain is to have good measurement. We can choose to have cold chain measurement through to the importer's warehouse. And as Long has said, you know, we know that you all do this, though I know that loggers aren't always retrieved and maybe the data isn't always looked at. But if you make sure you get the data, then you can answer questions like how many days shelf life is remaining at the time that the product gets unpacked from the container, and to ask yourself how this compares with the labelled shelf life. If you use a more sophisticated logger that allows you to do measurement right through the supply chain, then you're able to answer additional questions, such as how quickly is the product used? What is the shelf life at the temperature that's really encountered in the supply chain? And again, how that compares with the label. Because as Long showed us, products can end up having quite a short shelf life in real supply chains. But if the customer is using the product quickly, then they don't experience a problem. So collecting data and interpreting it with the model allows you to answer questions about potential problems. And we believe that many of you have problems. Maybe the problems that you have, you've just got used to having them. Maybe, you know, if you have less than a certain amount of loss or less than a certain number of customer claims, then you think you're doing well. But we're suggesting here that it's possible to reduce your level of problems to something below what you're experiencing now. So if you have the temperature data, if you analyze it in different ways, the different ways that Long has demonstrated, then it gives you a basis for knowing how to manage your product, what to do with it. And it's not always simple. There are various decisions that you can make. You have options for action. Maybe it's the cold chain through to the importer that you decide to manage better. Perhaps at your own establishment, you need to chill the product better. I've seen some of these traces where product is put into a shipping container at maybe 2 degrees, and then you try to cool it down in the shipping container, which takes days to occur. Maybe you need to have a lower loadout temperature, or your container temperature needs to be lower. I mentioned before that the New Zealand industry I think uses -1.5 as a standard. And how many container refrigeration failures do you have? Because if you're having refrigeration container failures, you may be able to claim on the insurance, but your insurance premium is based on the number of claims that you make. So again, it's possible to reduce your costs. Now, if you see that there's a problem in your cold chain after it's unloaded in the importing country, maybe you think the solution is education of your customers. Having this kind of data can tell you which customers have problems and which ones are doing a good job of looking after product. Maybe it allows you to choose which product goes to which customers so that you minimize the chance of that customer having a problem. And if all else fails, maybe you have to reduce the labeled shelf life on your product to make sure that you don't have a problem and customer complaints. These are all decisions that you can choose once you have data and analysis that helps you to make a decision. So analysis of your cold chain and taking appropriate action will reduce the number of customer complaints, the number of insurance claims, and we think that this is a way that you can add value to your business. So in summary, we've talked about how Australian vacuum packed sheep meat has a very long shelf life and the cold chain has to be managed to ensure a good shelf life. Current practices may be insufficient for shelf life of sheep meat in markets. So sometimes the product will reach the end of shelf life before the labelled end of shelf life. If we track the cold chain through to the customer, it allows problems to be identified, and analysis of the cold chain and taking appropriate action will reduce the number of customer complaints. So these are the things that we can do to ensure that the quality of Australian sheep meat is met and that we satisfy our customers. So very happy to take any questions that you might have at this point, and then there's just a couple more slides after this. So we've got a question, in terms of chilling product, what do you suggest is the best method? We don't have a lot of experience in this, I'd have to say. You've suggested blast chilling with carton lids off. I've heard that said, that that's a very good method. I think that would be effective. Well, David's asked a good science question. It's out of scope for today. No. How is it we get 12 weeks for lamb and 20 weeks for beef? I think it's a combination of things, and it's an area that we're still looking at. I think potentially the pH is important. The kinds of organisms that we see growing on lamb are quite different to some of the organisms we see growing on beef, and we think that may contribute to the spoilage. The University of Tasmania is still working on this. Mandeep Kaur is on this call, and when she was at the University of Tasmania, she was starting to look at this question. And it's an area for ongoing research. When we have the magic wand to wave and can make lamb's shelf life be equal to beef shelf life, then we'll come and wave the magic wand for you and let you know. But until then, the best solution that we have is paying a lot more attention to the finer points of cold chain management. So this is where we get to the last slide, because we've run you through this very quickly today and shown you a lot of different approaches to thinking about cold chain, and we recognise that we haven't given you enough information to just for you to go and start applying it. Maybe you've got some ideas, but most likely you'll need some follow-up. So we're very happy to share the slides with you. We think that you should form a team within your company. You should find a person within your company or a consultant who can handle the numbers and spreadsheets and technical stuff fairly well. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's somebody else within your company. We think a little team based on logistics and quality assurance and some of the marketing salespeople in importing countries would make a very good team. We can give you training and support, and the data that we've presented today, mostly has gained that data working with some of you, and so we're in a good position to give you some training and support and help you to do this for yourselves. If you're a levy-paying exporter, then you can get funding through the Plant Initiated Projects program at AMPC, and that can do things like cover the cost of loggers, the time for data collection, for analysis and reporting. But to be honest, we found that setting these projects up, it's a little bit of work, it's a little bit of thinking, but it's really not a lot of time and effort for what you get out of it. And so the projects end up not really being very large or very expensive. But if you decide you need to have a consultant to come and run this for you, and that's the best way to do it, then obviously it's going to cost a little bit more, but we think the results would be well worth it. So we'd like to leave it there with you thinking about what you need to do for your company and approaching us for some further advice. The most important thing is Long's email address and phone number down in the bottom left-hand corner. Given the way that it's the end of the financial year, we get quite busy, so it's probably best to send an email, even if you'd like Long to phone you up, send him an email saying, please give me a call, and we'll do that as soon as we can. But we're both very happy to take any other questions that you might have at this point. Well then, I think we hand back over to Sharon.
Thanks, Ian. That was really interesting. Okay, well, it looks like there's no other questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to say, Ian, or Long, or all done?
We're fine.
Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody
All
for
good?
joining
Okay.
today. And as you said, we'd really be pleased to follow up with any of you.
Okay, it looks like Sean's typing something, so there might be a question there.
You're welcome, Sean.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, bye.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye.